The year is 2025 and the trade war between the United States and Canada has reignited. Former President Donald Trump, once again at the helm of the U.S., has announced new tariffs on Canadian goods. These tariffs primarily target Canadian dairy and lumber, industries considered vital to the Canadian economy. This move has been met with immediate condemnation from the Canadian government, which views it as an attack on its economic sovereignty. Canada wasted no time in announcing retaliatory measures. Tariffs on a wide range of U.S. goods are set to be implemented. This tit-for-tat exchange marks a significant escalation in trade tensions between the two neighboring nations. The dispute has sent shockwaves through global markets, raising concerns about the future of U.S.-Canada trade relations. The re-emergence of a trade war between the U.S. and Canada underscores the fragility of the global trade system. It serves as a stark reminder of the economic and political risks associated with protectionist trade policies. The situation is fluid, and the world watches with bated breath as the two North American giants lock horns in a high-stakes trade battle. The potential consequences of this trade war are far-reaching. Both economies are deeply intertwined, and any disruption to the flow of goods and services will have significant impacts. Businesses on both sides of the border are bracing for the worst, fearing job losses and economic hardship. Amid the escalating trade war, the Canadian province of British Columbia has emerged as a focal point of contention. In a bold move, British Columbia has enacted legislation to impose tolls on U.S. commercial vehicles transiting through its territory to Alaska. This measure, while seemingly targeted at the U.S., has significant implications for the state of Alaska, which relies heavily on Canadian routes for its economic lifeline. The legislation, known as the Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act, empowers British Columbia to levy tolls and fees on vehicles utilizing its infrastructure. Though framed as a response to U.S. tariffs, the act has been interpreted by some as a strategic maneuver to exert pressure on the U.S., leveraging Alaska's dependence on Canadian transit routes. Furthermore, British Columbia has taken steps to prioritize Canadian products and services in government procurement. This move, coupled with the tolls on U.S. commercial vehicles, underscores the province's determination to mitigate the economic fallout of the trade war and promote domestic industries. British Columbia's actions have not gone unnoticed in Alaska. Governor Mike Dunleavy has expressed deep concern over the potential impact on Alaskan businesses and consumers, highlighting the state's vulnerability to disruptions in its supply chain. The situation has sparked a debate about Alaska's reliance on Canadian infrastructure and the need for alternative routes. Alaska's geographic reality presents a unique challenge in the face of the U.S.-Canada trade war. As an exclave of the United States, Alaska is physically separated from the contiguous 48 states and relies heavily on Canadian transportation routes for access to the rest of the country. This dependence on Canadian infrastructure, particularly roads, ports, and airspace, has become a strategic vulnerability for the state. The Alaska Highway, a testament to wartime cooperation between the U.S. and Canada, stands as a lifeline for Alaska. This 1,387-mile road, traversing British Columbia and Yukon Territory, serves as the primary land route connecting Alaska to the lower 48 states. Any disruption to this crucial artery, such as tolls or closures, would have a crippling effect on Alaskan businesses and communities reliant on the flow of goods and people. Beyond the Alaska Highway, Alaska depends on Canadian ports and railways for the transportation of goods. The Port of Vancouver, a major international shipping hub, plays a crucial role in facilitating trade between Alaska and the rest of the world. Similarly, Canadian railways provide vital connections for the movement of Alaskan resources, further highlighting the state's dependence on its northern neighbor. Alaska's vulnerability extends beyond trade and commerce. Air travel between Alaska and other U.S. states often involves transiting Canadian airspace. This reliance on Canadian air traffic control and infrastructure adds another layer of complexity to the situation. In response to the reimposition of U.S. tariffs, Canada has adopted a unified and resolute stance. The federal government, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has rallied the provinces under the banner of Team Canada. This coordinated approach signifies a collective determination to withstand U.S. pressure and protect Canadian economic interests. At the heart of Canada's retaliation is the imposition of counter-tariffs on a broad range of U.S. goods. These tariffs, carefully calibrated to inflict maximum economic pain on key U.S. sectors, aim to exert leverage over the U.S. administration and bring them back to the negotiating table. Beyond tariffs, Canada is actively pursuing diversification efforts to reduce its reliance on the U.S. market. The Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, and the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, known as CETA, with the European Union have emerged as key pillars of this strategy. The Team Canada approach extends beyond the federal level. Individual provinces, including Nova Scotia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Newfoundland and Labrador, have implemented their own retaliatory measures. These measures range from banning certain U.S. goods to increasing tolls on U.S. vehicles using provincial infrastructure. A history of trade disputes, U.S.-Canada economic tensions. The current trade war between the U.S. and Canada is not an isolated incident, but rather the latest chapter in a long and often contentious history of economic disputes. The two North American neighbors, despite sharing the world's longest undefended border and boasting deep economic ties, have frequently found themselves at odds over trade issues. One of the most enduring and acrimonious trade disputes involves softwood lumber. This decades-long conflict, rooted in differing interpretations of subsidies and fair trade practices, has resulted in numerous rounds of tariffs, counter-tariffs, and legal battles. Beyond softwood lumber, past U.S. administrations have imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, citing national security concerns. These actions have invariably provoked Canadian retaliation, leading to trade wars that have strained bilateral relations. The historical context of U.S.-Canada trade disputes reveals a pattern of confrontation followed by eventual compromise. However, the current trade war unfolds against a backdrop of heightened geopolitical tensions and a more assertive U.S. foreign policy. Legal challenges and potential resolutions, navigating international trade law. Canada contends that the reimposition of U.S. tariffs violates the provisions of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the successor to the North American Free Trade Agreement. The USMCA, which entered into force in 2020, governs trade relations between the three North American countries and includes mechanisms for resolving disputes. Canada has indicated its willingness to challenge the tariffs through the USMCA's dispute resolution process. This process involves consultations, followed by the establishment of a dispute settlement panel if consultations fail to resolve the issue. In addition to the USMCA, Canada could also file a complaint with the World Trade Organization. The WTO, a multilateral organization that regulates international trade, provides a forum for member countries to adjudicate trade disputes. While legal challenges through the USMCA and WTO offer avenues for redress, their effectiveness in resolving the current trade war remains to be seen. These processes can be lengthy and complex, and their outcomes are not always predictable. Economic and political fallout, the high stakes of a trade war. The rekindled trade war between the U.S. and Canada carries significant economic and political implications for both nations. The interconnectedness of the two economies means any disruption to the flow of goods and services will have ripple effects. For Canada, the trade war poses a threat to key industries such as lumber, dairy, and manufacturing. The imposition of U.S. tariffs could lead to job losses, reduced exports, and slower economic growth. However, Canada's diversified economy and its pursuit of trade agreements with other countries may mitigate some of these negative impacts. On the U.S. side, the trade war could result in higher prices for consumers, particularly for goods subject to Canadian counter-tariffs. It could also disrupt supply chains and harm businesses that rely on Canadian imports. Beyond the immediate economic fallout, the trade war has the potential to strain the long-standing friendship and alliance between the U.S. and Canada. The dispute has already generated negative sentiment among Canadians towards the U.S., and any escalation could further damage bilateral relations. The uncertain future of U.S.-Canada trade relations. The trade war between the U.S. and Canada stands as a testament to the complexities and fragilities of the global trade system. While history suggests that the two countries will eventually find a way to resolve their differences, the current dispute unfolds against a backdrop of heightened geopolitical uncertainty and a more assertive U.S. foreign policy. The outcome of this trade war remains uncertain. Much will depend on the willingness of both sides to engage in constructive dialogue and find mutually acceptable solutions. The stakes are high, and the world is watching closely as the two North American giants navigate this latest chapter in their long and intertwined history. Whether this trade war marks a temporary setback or a harbinger of a more fractured global order remains to be seen. One thing is certain: the future of U.S.-Canada trade relations, and indeed the global trading system, hangs in the balance.